I'd like the B point all the way up here. That's why I'm interested in it in the first place. And that could kick off the move for the 500 point B point above. We shall see. Problem is, we got so much space with this major downtrend here. Red yellow line. Sort of like a scoop, like we've seen before many times. The chop, and then the dump, and then the scoop. New trend can be placed. A little stop killer there. Reminds me a lot of a paddle pattern where it's fast at the beginning and choppy at the end. It's like we'll rally up and then make a 61% retracement and then break the red yellow line. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Almost like there's a blue line here as well. Beautiful reversal through the blue line. Beautiful movement. 2 seconds. Yeah, I would go as far as to say that that low was difficult to catch because it took so much time. Like, I could see the value of it going through the red yellow line and breaking out into a giant N. But you know how those N's have been lately? They've been like this, and then they make this like crazy thing that makes it look like a triangle, and then they break out. That's how it's been lately. You know what I mean? So having that happen here, it's not so far off that stupid triangulation part where we could then break out. And at the end of the day, will it look like an N? Like, will it look like this? Like, will it go to there? I mean, because that's the B point. So I'm not like, oh shit, it would go there, but it would also be the B point. And I'm like, okay. Well, making it for that time, that seems incredibly difficult, but it's not like it didn't move like that before. Like, this is what it did before, right? What would it take to get to that circle? Well, it would take that again. And I'm like, good luck with that, right? Like, who the heck thinks it's going to do that again? I mean, all the power to it, right? But, you know, slow it down half as much, maybe? Like give us some sort of triangle first, maybe? And then do that? That would be the best way. And you know this pattern that we're making right here? It's like a very flat, and then it makes a spike, and then it's very flat. Look in the morning. Is it not true that that was the low? That we made the low using that flat, and then spike, and then flat again? In the event that it is doing this pattern, is it not true that we could make an equal amount of consolidation, or equal distances on both sides? Slow and steady wins the race, though. That's for sure. You know, I like the idea of being able to respond negatively to the red-yellow line, but all of that dump, right? You see where it starts to look like there's chop? All that's going to be taken back. I would say 75% chance, like very high percent chance. Now, another thing that fits in line with that is we could say that the chop roughly started around here, right? Would that be okay to say? What's around there too? The 61? Where's our low? The 113? Is this level related to this level? Does it make sense that we go there? Does it make sense that we do respond to the red yellow line in so much way, shape, and form? You know, I'd say so. I would say so. So like, and you know what funny thing about getting to that level over there is as well? Is by the time that we get there, we will already be like close to halfway, and the next 61 will just be a little bit farther. And in this area where our so-called 61s are, the gold bar from another time is also there. So we've already made 61s here before, you know, and we've already been using this area. It's nothing special, to be fair. That gold bar, it's like the beginning of this consolidation. Like, if I had to think about this, like, we started going sideways since we hit that thing, and no move that we've ever had has ever mattered to getting away from it and staying away from it. Everything starts and ends at that gold bar. Nothing that we've ever done away from it has managed to stay away from it. I'm like, that's another thing. So not only the 113 leading back to the 61, not only running up to the red-yellow line, not only taking back all the chop, but also returning back to the one level that seems to be returned to, you know, pretty freaking frequently. So I'm like, all right. We'll do that. But geez, was it ever the case today that we had a lot of space to get to the red-yellow line? And does it not still feel like we do? What could we do with that? Well, if this area here was the consolidation area, and this area here was the spike, if we placed this spike on top of the consolidation area, would it not get us there? And I'm like, oh shit, it's true, it would. Now, is it not true that if you apply the same math on the other area from the bottom of the day, that if we were to apply that spike on the top, that's what it chose to do? I'm like, well, we could do that again. It's not like they didn't use that at 12 o'clock in the morning to reverse the market up for great points and much profit for those that were part of that. And I'm like, well, okay. So that was the method. Now, why is it that 60% of that formation is visible right now? What could it mean? Could it mean that they're using something that already worked before and they're going to push it out again? It's not like it's just so obvious for everyone to see, oh yeah, that's the reversal pattern. Everybody will look at 12 o'clock in the morning. Some people's charts don't even freaking show 12 o'clock in the morning. Like people that don't know about futures, they don't think you can even trade there. And nobody wants to tell them. When we made an N like this before, you could see how I was like, oh, if it wanted to be a real N, it would go like that. But instead, it took the same distance that we had on the top and moved it over to the right. So it took that distance and moved it over, and we landed there. You want to know what's funny? Because I can do the same math now. Like we can go right. Where's the chart we were using? Onto the chart we were using and put it on there. So in the event that we were to do an N properly, it would end up like there. Now, if we were to do it the way that we did it the other day, we would end up here. Oh, interesting. But it would end up there for exactly that time, which is disturbing. Well, a long time away though, eh? Like the whole freaking day could happen again. Like that's how much time away that is, pretty much. And there's not enough time in the day to get to that spot exactly. But I mean, those other ends, it's funny because they can make this motion and make it seem like it's a triangle, like in here especially, and then find their way to that point very quickly. Like sometimes when it ends that chop and when it finishes getting past that high, it can actually be done. And like where we are right now, we're starting to look like, a triangle a little bit, right? That's the deal here. So it's like that other day. And to me, it's really doing that thing. Now, you know what's funny? This is big. This is huge. This one, huge. Absolutely. It's never been this big. Well, maybe it has. It's just not been this big lately. And I kind of get the vibe that they were trying to do that same sort of N thing over here, but there was a lot of congestion in that same general area. Same thing over here. It's like, oh, I want to be an N, but instead I have this ridiculous triangle, and it's like, oh yeah, the N. We'll get there for you. And it's not going to look clean, but it still got away with it after the stupid triangle, right? Yeah. So that does seem to be happening more regularly than not. Even over here, I'm like, why when you make the N, right? It can't just be normal. It has to have this like little area of destruction. And over here too, geez. So when we make an N, it just can't just make it properly. It has to do some sort of triangulation or make some sort of trouble zone. Oh yeah, then don't mind me, I'm still making the N. But this little area right here, problematic every time, it would seem. Something wrong with it. And the best looking ends can actually be like this one. And what's funny about that is it might be recognized as a completely different pattern, like that. But, it did allow for a really nice looking end, to happen as a result of making that pattern. Yeah, like look at this one over here. I mean, I just can't stop seeing it now. It's like it was stuck between a spike on the top, a consolidation, and a spike on the bottom, but it definitely had that N look to it, right? But the N was fine except for this little shit zone down here. And I'm like, you really got to watch out for that. And I'm like, when I think about this right here and all those ends that have been constructed in this spot right here, where does it feel like we are right now? Like where does it feel like this is right now? Like, could this be that to this? It's an interesting argument, and it's not like everyone's just gonna land on that conclusion. I find it you have to dig, and the market pays those that dig. Not those that just repeat. And I mean, what's funny is I can prove to you that in the 90s and the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, repeating was fine. Nothing wrong with it. It's 2025, 2024. This is a different time than all of those decades where repeating was fine. But now we can see that the things that it chooses to repeat are unfamiliar to the public. But yeah, no, more and more I look at this, the more and more I assume everyone is thinking triangle. And they're not wrong. But it has to go on for long enough for people to actually be able to notice that it needs to do this. Now, we know that in the other examples, this is certainly appropriate to make some sort of triangulation here before going up. And that sketch is a little bit rough, but the concept is what I'm doing. And yeah, we're in the problem zone. The zone, and I would like to think that it's almost finished too. People don't know that this is happening to them, that it has a beginning point and an end point, and it's part of a process that's being influenced by somebody that understands that it has a certain result, a certain impact. And I respect that. It's not just the trader versus the market. They got to think about the people that have the capacity to move it and why they would. I'll find this pattern. I'll show you that the other day I made a picture, okay, where each one of these days had a circled low. Day 1, day 2, day 3, right? And inside that circle was this pattern. Sharp, choppy, rally back to the high of where the chop began, like this point, and then 61% retracement, and then rally through that high. Sometimes we would do the 61% retracement again and go. And what's funny is that was the first one. We haven't seen that much since, but this is common. And yeah, sure, the 61 does work. 61 usually does work. And typically what we would do around triangle tips is attack them from both sides. So it really raises a question of, is it safe to keep a stop around where the 61 of the entire movement would be? Because if I take that fib right up to the very top, right, and then pull it all the way down to the bottom, if we were to take the movement that we did on the top, would it be the same distance that's required on the bottom to get to the 61? That is an interesting statement. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter for anyone that's holding from the extreme, but it is a common movement to try and make an equal spike out of both sides. So in the event that we can prepare in advance for it or hedge for it, it's ideal. But yeah, we made the distance down to the 61. We came down there, and that's where we're grinding right now. This trend still struggled to break. Obviously, the 61 in that area up there hasn't been hit, but it reminds me still of what we would do when we shoot down, and then we start chopping. We come up and we make a 61. That's what we do when we do this. Now, we didn't quite clear all of the chop, but most of it. Does it suffice? I mean, there's enough time in the day to manage to get back up to that gold bar. Getting away from that trend line is the biggest event that we could have, actually breaking it. But it is true that what we've managed to do is make an equal move on both sides of the triangle and have yet to come back to test from the underside. A movement that would be quite typical. Now, thinking about what it would look like to get back to the tip of that triangle, if we were to make a 61% retracement of the entire downwards move so far from there, that would get us to just about that tip of that triangle as well. So 61 to 61 is something that was common. But yeah, it looks like we're rallying off of the trend line and 61. And B points still remain untested above at the tip of the triangle. But we knew about the 61 to 61. And the 61 that we could do on the way back up is a little bit above the tip of the triangle. Just a tad. And similar to this kind of analysis before, I want to take a look at what these two lows would translate into in the event that they became our high. And the beauty of that, I mean, that's a specific spot, a specific space in time. Just like, when we can see in the construction of the highs here, when we took those two lows at the bottom, they translated very much into the highs that we made just beyond. So I'm like, yeah, no, that's totally. And when you think about that, like every time it breaks through that 61 when it does that properly, like to make an N like this, when you make a 61, right, from this downwards movement, it gets to the 61 about here. And it has to break to make the rest of it. Just like this one will if it's ever to be a proper N. And I'm like, don't get too excited about that one because the real N is this guy. If we can get that thing to work, that could be some serious movement. Now, of course, we're not going to go back in time to get there, but we could easily find ourselves getting to this, general area here. Yeah, I mean, more specifically in that general area. Yeah, that's the 61 to 61. We know that when we do this, we always make a triangle. Now, it doesn't matter that we came from a triangle before, but we have one again. Now, the irony, when I explained how the 61 has to fail for us to make an N, well, in order to make this big one, right, this entire 61 at the very, very top of this gold bar right here, it would have to fail to get us to this circle. Now, that circle makes a lot of sense because it's one movement over from the right. And that's what I calculated in the past for previous ends that had this same kind of problem. They ended up in that general area. So it's intriguing, to understand that we did make everything that would be required in doing this process, from rallying up to make the first part of the N, and dumping down, and then chopping, then popping up and making that 61. Now that 61 is working. It broke through the next 61, and we're left with a pattern that looks like that so far. Very similar to what we were looking at before. I just drew in an extra area. This is what we have right now, just like that. And it's breaking through the 61 and forming that N as it should. And just to confirm, on the previous triangle, like if I turn that into a different color so we can see how it was its own triangle, everything that we did out of the top happened out of the bottom and maybe a little bit more, then ultimately returned back up. Very similar to how we would make an N. Understanding that when we get to the bottom of that gold bar, that is the 113 at the bottom coming all the way back up to 61. We know that those fibs there have a relationship with this here, so keeping stops above that level is rough. Understanding that 61 still broke, it doesn't mean that we can't test it from above even in future times. It doesn't have to be immediately or anything, because one thing that really threatens that return is the triangle itself. We saw that when we had a triangle before, like the purple one, that we were so interested in coming back from both sides and making it even, making it retested, and why not the big one? Certainly you would think it would be allowed. Typically in this environment, it would be at a point that would be considering a breakout to the upside. And retesting the triangle can just be a small minor counter trend move in the grand scheme of things. Just like coming back down to attack a 61 from above, as it's in the process of failing. These times of the day are times where I think that few are trying to be incredibly aggressive, but I can see that out of that calm, dull, stale-like motion, there can be a very, very major movement that you can tell is like the institutions making their mark or putting their foot down, essentially. The beauty of it is it may look like a Head and Shoulders failing by the end of it. And in order to do that, like you could see how we could go like this and make an N, like that. Instead of making the shoulder, it could make an N. And I think that's what we're going to go for here. We're going to try and do that. Like when we made a middle for people to trade at, that's when things started to get tough for them. Like at the point that the middle really could be, marked in, anybody that shorted past that point was threatened in the future. anybody that bought under that point was, struggling significantly for a prolonged period of time. And that struggle ended for people that chose value in here. Then the struggle continued for all of this time, except for the people that, found value there. So in here, it's likely to be very struggle orientated for even the short sellers due to the fact that they had like impending doom, to take back all their profit. And the people that really got away are the people that caught the best price and, endured the pullbacks and now are back on track with having the best price for the movement back to the mean. The people that caught the pullback, in theory, may have been working for 2 hours and 7 minutes to reacquire a position that they may have already had. And they may have taken losses trying to do so. Or it could have been more profit, but there's more risk associated with that than there would be in just holding the best price. And knowing that catching pullbacks can be so tedious in this environment, it's easy to hold a little for a long time instead of trying to, conquer the risks of the consolidation for 2 hours, because every long trade had to be managed profitably for 2 hours straight, because every single one that was chosen to hold ended up being a loser until 2 hours was over. And that's the crazy part about it. And that's like anybody that tried to catch the first pullback or beyond struggled for 2 hours before they got something that can actually stick. But the people that caught the bottom have been allowed to wait for 2 hours and endure a 61% retracement, and now may be allowed to move on with their position. And it would be choppy in this area here with the triangle, and then the breakout. The breakout happens after this choppy, difficult area. It's still on track. It's not off course by any means, which doesn't necessarily make it easy. It does take a significant amount of time. Now, the significance of something so large like this one is it reminds me of the first time that we did it, when we made another smaller N on top and an even smaller N, which does give us that, rising wedge sort of look. And it did come down. It did make a new low after that. It's almost like taking this whole thing and doubling it again to acquire that kind of that next motion. It's almost like taking this play out and doubling it again. So I find that intriguing as well, because it's not like this isn't an uncommon pattern. It is a big version of a common pattern. And I say common as in common to the market, not common necessarily to the public. The public may be more used to ends that work properly and don't have this added, triangulation of, ridiculousness, and then we go. But at the end of the day, we often find that it looks just like an end does, except it takes a little bit more time to get to the point it would usually get to, as we went over earlier. And usually it takes this much, but this much. And we end up wasting so much time in the triangle here that the breakout actually gets us to there instead of being able to just make a normal N to here. So that's why I have those other circles on there too, just to remind about that, about the time that it's taken before, when it's been set up like this, to get to those places. Because when it had all of these things before, those are the places that it decided to be when it was done. So I'm like, well, let's see it then. It just so happens to offer a great magnitude of profit in the event that we could do this again. And remember that everything out of the triangle can be done quickly. It doesn't have to take a long time. And I mean, it's taking a long time, but still, it doesn't have to. It could speed up at any moment. So I'm not necessarily waiting for it to speed up at any moment, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it speed up. Like, the people that just made it move like this are going to eventually put their, foot on the gas again, kind of thing. This is what it looks like when they don't have any foot on the gas. and the amount of movement that's left over is kind of stale and sideways, more so. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of this movement right here. Like this movement that we did that was like that and like that. And then we take that over here and I'm like, oh shit, we did that again. Almost. Doesn't it seem very similar? I mean, they're not perfect, I guess, but geez, I think it's intriguing to see where those things happened. Like we had a movement that was like that at the very bottom, okay? So they caused that reversal as far as I'm concerned. And then we had another movement like that here. You know where that was? The 61. So these guys that make the bottom knew about that 61 and also traded on it, just like they did here before. When we do that, right, what do? Well, we go up like that, right? Like that. Interesting. Now, I'll tell you one thing. When we make a pullback, we've confirmed that this is the size that we can make a pullback. That's a pretty decent size. 64 point, well, hold on. Maybe about 60 points, yep. So when we make a pullback, like when we achieve one of these major levels up here, or when we make it past the high by 60 points, it can become disturbing, and because there could be a need to make that pullback. And if I take a look on the way down, like, is that an uncommon pullback? Like, did it happen regularly? Like, I think it happened pretty freaking regularly. Like, come on. You know what I mean? So, at the end of the day, I do think that that's valid, and we got to watch out for 60-point pullbacks, which sucks. It means that at any given time, that when we make a high or an extreme, that 60 points could be taken off the top before there's ever any real danger. Like, just because it makes a 60-point pullback doesn't mean that the trend's in actual danger. Sorry. Like, think about it over here, for instance. How many 60 freaking point pullbacks did we make before the trend was actually in danger? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pullbacks. The 7th one was the one that was able to exceed that pullback. 7th one. So, you know what this part reminds me of? It reminds me of taking back the chop. Now, was the chop not just like a frenzy of constant 60-point pullbacks? And all of that was taken back with great difficulty. 61% retracement of the entire move is there, and like, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly the pattern that I was talking about before with the freaking triangle and the beautiful breakout, right? And now we're making what looks like a freaking N, right? And we've even exceeded the time, like that it was supposed to get here for here, and we've got here sooner, and that's better. I mean, it's not a bad thing; it's a good thing. Sooner is better always. But, what about the big N? Like when we moved like this before, it was only 25 minutes or something like that to get all the way up to that B point would have been the spot. Now, if we take that distance over here and understand that that's also the distance to get over here, that's the spot that's really interesting to me. In fact, these two spots were the ones that I found most intriguing. Then I'm like, okay, what if we just do that as well? Okay. Hold on a second. What the heck is going on with this line? Is that's the number one line, eh? Let's take a look at it. 2 seconds. When do we touch that thing? Touch it over here. Okay. Okay, no, we've never touched it. We've only ever formed it. Okay, so that was a formation point. Did it ever touch it since it was formed? No. Never has it ever touched it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the line. If you're serious, you're going for that line. So at the end of the day, sure, the N can form. Sure, we can make another N on top of it. And it would look like a rising wedge. And this trend might have a negative response. And then it might break. And if it does break, I don't see a way to provide even more value. It would be a significant trend break. But sure, when we do get to that level, does it make sense to hedge it? Oh yeah, it does. You want to know why? Well, because if we break through the level that we're at right now, that's the 61% retracement. We could go all the way up to the 141 or all the way up to the 113. Like in this general area from here to here is where we could likely run into the red yellow line. Is that safe to say? And if we did, we would be at levels that send us back down to the 61. And that 61 could easily be hit, and then we could rally back to the trend after having come back down. So if we rally up, hit the trend, dump back to here, like this would suggest, we could actually rally beyond that after. That would be the best play, I think. And the institutions are going to be thinking about what they want to do, and clearly they're buying the crap out of the market at times that are incredibly difficult for people just to get lucky on, because it's at the end of the day, after much chop and waiting and discipline has to be like exerted, people have to understand that this pattern does make a triangle, that it does make chop, that it is slow, that it's not like a normal N, and that it has extra grind, extra bullshit associated with it. And because it's such a big one, it could really milk it too, right? But yeah, I mean, everything that, I consider a short-term target has been fulfilled. So everything that we've seen, so far should put you in a position where if you acted on it, you're flexible enough to choose whether or not you want to keep holding some for beyond the red-yellow line, as that is the most serious play that you could get exposure to, in my opinion, that actually makes freaking sense. Now, the irony is that much of the movement we get beyond this price could easily be taken back down to where we are now. So are you comfortable with, if you're holding from the bottom, that much of your future profit could be taken back, but you won't have to try and catch the chop to be in for the pop? You can keep holding from the bottom and avoid this similar kind of crappy, terrible environment over here if we do make it again. Now, what this reminds me of is this pattern happening again. Like, does it not remind us of the thing that we did when we started this day? When we started the move at the bottom, it's a very similar kind of like quote unquote pennant or flag. I'm not opposed to getting that spot though, but just beware that spot is beyond the day's end after the close. But I don't care if it's supposed to get there for that time, then that's the time it'll get there for that time, right? So at the end of the day, if it's supposed to get to that level, period, well, that's a B point. Are we ever going to see that level again? Well, I hope so. Do I think it's going to be too long? Not at all. I don't think so. I think it'll be an appropriate time to get to that spot. Would I like to see it get there at exactly that time? Yeah. There's like a 75% chance that it will get there for that time, though. Maybe 65% chance. I'm looking at it like it's a good potential. Like, imagine, okay, let's say we did what we did again. Where would we be? Well, it looks like we would have to do it again, and then we would be there. Like, is that okay? I guess so. Interesting concept. It's not a bad consideration either. But the day is almost over, and we came back, and I'm going to let that off with, a test of the triangle. Like, did it come back and attack the triangle? I'm going to say so. Even though it might have been like a little bit off there or whatever, we can let that one pass. And I mean, it was a 5-wave move, right? Like at the end of the day, it made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then when it pulled back not incredibly significantly. It missed the 61. It used another 5-wave move on the way down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, to then reverse back up to the same general area where it fell down to the 1 originally. It rose up to the 1. So that's also interesting information for tomorrow, that if we can see that it's rallying from 5 to 1, we can see as well that it dumped from 5 to 1. Now, of course, when you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 to 1 is the third high, so if you go 1, 2, and 3, back to the first high. So 5 to 1 is a 3 drives pattern playing out. Now, of course, we've got that arrow all the way up there too, where I mentioned, before we even left the consolidation, that arrow is a good place to go, because I managed to take that distance from that low to that high all the way up there, and then duplicate it again to the right, and then basically that puts us in that area of where that is. And I noticed that that's in between the 188 200 and the 261, and it's also right at, and that's not where it ends. I do believe that we can absolutely use these levels to come back down to these ones in the overnight session, because there's a red yellow line all the way up here that's never been broken. We can go ahead and apply it actually on this chart. Why not? So these two highs right here. So we go ahead and take this one, that on the very, very top. So yeah, that one up there. That one's the one that we can hit in the overnight session. Obviously, this one has to break in order to get us there. But those are some really interesting levels to get to in the overnight sessions. This pattern, it definitely did what it should. The whole idea of it coming down and making that triangulation and then breaking out of that triangulation with very, very clear intent was the case. Now, much of what they've done, if not all of what they've done, has come back to where the triangle initially left. But that's as the triangle does. So I don't think that's too out of order. At the end of the day, the movement clearly got up to the 61 and completed at the blue line as well. You know what? I noticed something about that blue line too. And I thought about this. I was like, okay, so that blue line was created from today. And when we fell to it very sharp, and then went past it really choppy, and then rose really sharp. And I thought that we could go choppy past it.